Hi, I'm Margaret, and welcome to Garden School. Today I'm out by a little pond that I have that's just kind of a sinkhole in the ground. It doesn't have any moving water in it, but I noticed that there's some duckweed, and I wanted to just talk a little bit about duckweed plants. Well, let's take a look and see what's going on in this little pond. So this is just a little sinkhole, a little container that's been dropped into the ground. It is kind of deep, and it has a lot of leaf residue in it from the maple trees, but you can see here also this little tiny plant, duckweed. Now, duckweed, there are 9 species in North America, and they are found everywhere everywhere except in Hawaii and North Carolina, and maybe, well, who knows. Now, this species is probably Lemna minor, which is common duckweed. And the interesting thing about the structure on these plants is there's no real stem and no real leaf. Instead, there's what they call a thallus or a frond, and then a root, or maybe several simple roots, or maybe no root at all. That is the very simple structure of this plant. And another thing is that there is that rarely do they produce a flower and produce sexually. So as far as their reproduction goes, they can produce sexually through flowers, but those flowers are the smallest flowers. It's the smallest flowering plant known. They're microscopic, basically. So typically, the reproduction is done asexually through budding. Now, duckweed reproduce real rapidly, and because of that, they can cover an entire pond area, especially if it's still water and it's not disturbed, and no running water. Now, when that happens, wow, it can really look impressive, and just like this lawn area, except it's water. But there is some concern about that, and that is that when the duckweed, the thallus or the little frond, what we would say as a leaf, when that covers the surface of a pond, that prevents sunlight from penetrating down into the water to the aquatic plants that are underwater, and then they cannot photosynthesize, and also the algae that would be photosynthesizing, that cannot function, and the photosynthetic process produces oxygen. That's so important because that oxygen is important for the animal life. And so when that happens, and when you have less oxygen being produced for your animal life, then you might see ponds that can't support fish or other animals, things like that. I don't think I have to worry about my little pond here. But another thing is that duckweed is really a great high protein source for a waterfowl. That's a very important thing. So I guess if you have a place where you're concerned about that, maybe try to invite some waterfowl in to eat that high protein food for them. Now, some have thought that duckweed can be beneficial in a bioremediation situation where you're trying to draw excess nitrogen or phosphates out of a water environment. Because they reproduce so quickly, you can get them to establish and to reproduce, and then harvest that. So then take that plant out, and then what you're doing is helping to reduce the excess nitrogen, phosphorus, and perhaps other minerals that might be in a water environment. So that is one use that people have been talking about that, and even in wastewater treatment. So it could be a very great potential for a lot of uses that would help us. Well, I don't think I need to worry about the duckweed taking over in my little pond with my little floating koi in here. I think that's kind of cute. But it's kind of nice to see. And if it was going to proliferate, I could certainly scoop some out and try to make more open area for light to penetrate, because I do have water lilies in here. They're starting to come up. That's kind of cool. But the duckweed can be useful, and I mentioned a couple of things. These tiny leaves that are less than 1/4 of an inch long, these really are less than 1/4 of an inch long, and they're not true leaves, the thallus. They can be beneficial to control mosquitoes that would breed in water, in a still water environment, and even to control evaporation. So there's some real bonuses to having some duckweed, as well as some caveats and some things to be aware of. Well, I'm pretty happy with what I see here in my little pond this spring day. Oh, okay. Well, that's pretty good. We learned a little bit about duckweed, some good things, and some things to be aware of too. Well, there's always more to learn in the garden. Bye-bye.